Hi guys, I really wanted to make a video about why I left the horse industry, and this isn't a video to crush people's hopes and dreams or bash on anyone who wants to get into the horse industry, but this is just a video for me to share my own experience and to help people avoid these potential red flags. This also isn't a video to bash on any of the barns. I'm not going to disclose any of their names. This isn't also to say that I'm not grateful for the experiences that I have gotten, because it really opened my eyes to the amount of work and care it takes to run these facilities, and not only just run the facilities but also to care for a horse. And it did in the long run help me learn how to care for my lease horse that I have now. So when I graduated high school, all I knew is that I wanted to work with horses, so I reached out and I got a call back from a facility about an hour away from me, and this was my first ever job. They were a large show facility that did dressage, hunters, jumpers, stuff like that. They also rehabbed thoroughbreds. This facility had about 70 horses, and I worked there for about 6 months. One of the tasks that we had to do was muck out. So there's two different types of shifts. In the morning, you can have a morning shift or you can have an evening shift, and I usually swapped between different days of the week. But the morning shift was very brutal because you had to muck out about 50 stalls, and it's just you and one other person, and it takes all morning, probably about 4 to 5 hours to muck and redo all of these stalls, and the shavings were very heavy. They did not prioritize a high quality bedding, and they were trying to save shavings as much as they can, so this place was very hard to muck out all the time. One of the things I noticed right away is that you are overworked and underpaid, and you really need to set your boundaries when you are going into a barn hand or a groom job, because you will be taken advantage of, and you need to prioritize learning, growing, and charging your worth. Really negotiate your hourly rate, because that is something you're going to be living off of, and I understand that working with horses is a huge dream, a huge goal, and it's an amazing opportunity to have, but if you do not give yourself a livable wage, it's going to be very hard for you to succeed every day. One of the things I experienced was toxic boarders. One day, I forgot to grain one bucket out of about 50 horses, and the lady came at me very furious, very angry. I apologized profusely and got the grain to the horse, but still she hated me after that. It was not a nice experience, and I was only 18. So that was one of the first negative experiences with a boarder I had. That really stuck with me, because afterwards I went and cried in the grain room. She was very upset, and even though I fixed it, she was still upset, and that was just the type of person she is. One of my goals upon being hired, never mentioned to anyone, but just working in the horse field, I thought my passion and goal would be to train and teach lessons, so train horses, teach lessons. Quickly found out that that is not the case. You can be working as a barn hand for the rest of your life, and no one will want to teach you and train you on horses. That is something you have to invest in yourself. You cannot just expect other people to hold your hand and walk you through and make you this amazing trainer. That is not how it works. I did also take lessons at this barn about once a week, but I found out very quickly that there was favoritism within the training program. So even though I was rising quickly because I've had previous lessons growing up, just was never consistent, the ladies were always on their phone. So you're paying for an hour lesson for them to be on your phone, tell you to walk trot, do a little bit of sitting trot, maybe you're doing circles. Like, there was no real benefit being there. You were just giving your money to these people that were just sitting on their butt. And I was very upset and very confused as to why this was happening, and I even asked to switch trainers at one point and had the same issue. There was a small clique of girls within there that were rising through the levels and showing, and it seemed like the trainers and head barn trainer prioritized those girls over beginner programs or anything like that. So after about 6 months, I left that place and got an opportunity at a different facility. It was a small hunter barn. The pay was still next to nothing, but I also was enrolled in their training program, taking lessons on their lesson horses. And I experienced the same type of thing where the trainer had a small clique of girls that were prioritized over other people. I did get a lot farther, but I feel like I was almost started too early over fences. So the reward was a bit better, but I still felt like I was underprepared for things that I was given. Yeah, I just still wasn't very happy with how I was progressing with my training as well as my pay, so I ended up landing a opportunity at a large, high-level hunter facility. I did not take lessons over here. This place was the place that ended up causing my burnout and ended up having me leave the horse industry altogether, because this was kind of like my last stand. I was at this place for about 2 years. The horses were turned out 1 to 3 hours a day. If it was raining, storming, there was no turnout at all. There was a lot of abuse, drugging, chains. Like, my opinion is, within the right hands, tools can be used for a good purpose, but these people were not using them for a good purpose. There were stressed out horses, and instead of addressing the issue, they would just cover it with a band-aid. So for example, we had one horse over there, you could not go in her stall because she would start trying to kick and bite at you. And if you wanted to grab her, you had to put a grazing muzzle over her, not because she was overstuffing herself out in the field, it was because she would try to bite you, so you had to muzzle her like she was a dog. Also addressing with the turnout, if any horses freaked out, were running, we had to take everyone back in, depending on who's freaking out. And usually it was a chain reaction because it was one pasture for one horse, and they had multiple pastures within probably a mile radius, which involved a lot of walking. My one coworker had one of those Apple Fit watches, and it was calculating about 5 to 7 miles of walking she was doing a day, and we all had the same type of schedule, so we were all walking about 5 to 7 miles, getting these horses in and out for them to only have 3 hours max of turnout. There was toxic management, of course. If you wanted to have a day off, it was your responsibility to fill that day and find someone else to work for you, otherwise you could not take that day off. Your vacation had to be approved, and usually there was jealousy with it. You had to live, eat, breathe, be at this barn. Their morning shift was at about 5 a.m., which is not bad. That's pretty typical within a high-level barn, but it's the fact that you have to wake up at 5 a.m. and you are relied on for all of these horses, and if you call in sick, game over. Like, you have to be there, because it's 5 a.m. and who is going to be up at 5 a.m. to take your shift, you know? Not only was there drugging of horses just so they wouldn't freak out within the ring while riding, or freaking out in their field, and it's not like they were recovering from an injury. They were just being drugged just to be drugged because they knew that these horses were crazy, so they would just drug them because they weren't getting enough proper turnout. So it was like a circle, a vicious cycle. I had coworkers there who were addicted to drugs, people just trying to manage their pain, to be able to keep working because it was very taxing on our bodies. Another thing is, we were all grooms or barn hands, and then there was a select few who were managers, and one of the duties of the managers was to feed other horses. Most of the managers I became friends with, however, the lead person, I don't remember what their title was, but she basically oversaw all the operations. She was very lazy. all of us had to carry and do the work for her, and she would usually come out, maybe muck 1 to 2 stalls to help us through our huge day, and thought that that was enough. Was not adequate for the amount of work that we were doing, and it felt like a slap in the face for her to say it's so easy to go around and clean stalls and things like that when she wouldn't even put in the work herself. So needless to say, with all of this going on, I did eventually get burnout, being there for 2 years, and one day I came home and was winding down for the day. I was watching a video of Girl with the Dogs, and she was dog grooming, and I thought to myself, well, heck, why don't I try and go do that? And the rest goes on from there, but it is very unfortunate that I had the experience that I did within the horse industry. It is no longer a full-time job for me. I am still with horses, but it is more as a hobby now. It is not a job. I am very grateful for the experiences that I did get. However, the positives outweighed the negatives as well as caused burnout, so I did eventually leave. I also hope that this opens people's eyes to red flags they may be experiencing within a barn or a barn job. Yeah, thank you for listening, watching, following along this video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one, alright? Bye!